السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا وعظيمنا وحبيبنا محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أوصي وأوصيكم بتقوى الله. قال تعالى: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصمه. صدق الله العظيم. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: لخلوف من الفم الصائم أطيب عند الله تعالى من ريح المسك. صدق رسول الله. أما بعد، Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has honored and ennobled us to witness another Ramadan. For many of our families and brethren, neighbors and friends, colleagues, perhaps acquaintances, did not get the opportunity this year. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this a fruitful Ramadan for us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to get through this Ramadan with a renewed sense of devotion and ubudiyyah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enlighten us and to raise us in maqamat, in ranks, through our siyam, through our qiyam, through our qira'ah, and through our istighfar, and through our dua, birahmatika ya arhamar rahimeen. There are many of those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides to take to Jannah, and He takes them to Jannah in a very active way. In other words, they strive hard to reach Jannah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quickly enters them into Jannah. And then there are others of His makhluqat, there are other human beings that don't have a major concern about reaching Jannah at all. But through the infinite rahmah and the infinite bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He drags them to Jannah kicking and screaming. There are many of those that enter into the month of Ramadan and they have no concern about its barakat and the sacredness of its time. They just want to get through it. How many people go to the Hajj or experience the Umrah, they perform their rites, they go and they come right back and they finish and they feel as though they've done everything they need to do. There are those that come in the month of Ramadan, never come to the masajid. Ramadan comes, they come to the masjid and they leave, and many of them don't even stay the full 30 nights. After Taraweeh is done on the 23rd night or 25th night, khalas, you don't see them again till next year. These people, the Prophet ﷺ has spoken about them and has warned us not to be like that, and has warned those individuals not to stay like that. Because although Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through His infinite rahmah continues to send lifelines to us, continues to send more Ramadans to us, the idea is that we must take hold of that lifeline and eventually take it seriously and not take it for granted. رُبَّ صَائِمٍ, the Prophet ﷺ said, how many of a fasting person, لَيْسَ مِنْ صِيَامِهِ إِلَّا الْجُوعُ, the only thing they get from fasting is hunger. وَعَطَشْ, and the only thing they get from being from fasting is being thirsty. وَتَعَبْ, and the only thing that they get from the fasting experience is fatigue. And so the idea is, because they only receive hunger and thirst and fatigue, their concern is about ridding themselves of that. So they can't wait until they eat. They can't wait until they drink. They can't wait until Ramadan is gone. They sit and endure Ramadan as if they are sitting in the middle of traffic on a highway, waiting to reach their exit. And this is the wrong way to be. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His infinite rahmah, on the one hand, allows for us to hit those bumps in the road and continues to send us another Ramadan again. You didn't get the lesson last year, so we'll give it to you again this year. Khalas, you were at one level last year, you really didn't take it seriously last year, so we'll give you another chance this year. But just because you have it this year does not at all in any way guarantee that you will get the same opportunity next year. For we know after Ramadan is the month of Dhul Qa'dah and Dhul Hijjah, and then Muharram, and then the Arwah, the new titles, the new names of the souls that are to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those names are pulled and announced in the coming months as well. And so we must be about the business of when we welcome Ramadan, we also want to look at the characteristics in ourselves that are unwelcoming. And by welcoming Ramadan, and by saying Ahlan wa Zahlan wa Marhaban ya Ramadan, we want to also be mindful of those characteristics that we want in ourselves, that we want to say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good riddance. We don't want to see you again. For the month of Ramadan at its core is about an ilaj, a treatment for the ego, the self, otherwise known as the nafs. And the month of Ramadan is about first knowing the nafs. Because the Prophet ﷺ said in an authentic narration which was reported by Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala an, that during the month of Ramadan, all of the shayateen are locked up and the gates to Jahannam are closed. And this hadith means that any negative characteristic that we see in ourselves during the month of Ramadan, that is a human characteristic that exists in our own nafs, and we are not and cannot blame the shayateen for that. Thus, the nufus, the nafs and the egos emerge in the month of Ramadan, and we get to see ourselves, both our real self in who we are, who we need to change, and also for the potential self that we would like to become. For during the month of Ramadan, our potential selves come out as well. And it is through that potential self that we see that we are engaged in salat in the middle of the night, in qiyamul layl, in so much istighfar, so much dua, so much silence, so much contemplation, so much awareness. And this potential that we have is a potential that we have to unlock for after Ramadan as well. And it is through the infinite bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we are given a chance to see who we can become, how far we can actually take our level of ubudiyyah and service to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He shows us how far we can go, what we can do, the energy we have even though we have less fuel, what our true potential is regarding spending, what our true potential is regarding qira'at, what our true potential is with respect to mu'amalat and adab, and how we deal with each other, how we interact with each other, how we come together as a community. Those are our true potential. And that glimpse is at its core supposed to be inspirational. And it is supposed to be transformational as well. For through that time, we are supposed to be inspired as to who we can and who we should become. And that's why the month of Ramadan is called by the Prophet ﷺ Shahr Ummati. It's the Shahr of my Ummah. My Ummah get to see each other as they are, and at the same time, paradoxically, as who they should be as well. The characteristics, the habits that we build through these next 30 days are supposed to be habits and characteristics that also in some way, form or fashion continue outside of those 30 days as well. And so it is a time that we must ask ourselves, what is it? What kind of adab, what type of akhlaq, what kind of characteristics do I want to take with me post-Ramadan, going into Ramadan? Going into Ramadan, I want to know what I want to take coming out of Ramadan. We do this at a human level with everything. We go to the grocery store and we know what we want to come out with. We know, for example, that when we want to go and purchase something, we have an idea of what it is. No one goes into any business transaction with no idea of what you want to get out of it. And the most transformational, most important transaction is the transaction of the nafs. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He's purchased the human beings, our amwal and our anfus, our soul, for what? For Jannah, in exchange for Jannah. And so it is not only these 30 days where we go and do acts of ibadah, and then after Ramadan, all of them cease, all of them drop. No, we're supposed to latch on and take on something and take it with us outside of the 30 days. There's a story about the man who had cats, and he had a lot of 12, 14, 15 cats. And he decided, one day I'll do something with these cats. And so he taught the cats how to stand up on their hind legs. and with their front two legs, how to serve people tea. And so the cats, they would stand up on their hind legs, and they would have their paws like this, and there would be the teacup, the tea saucer in the paws, with the teacup, and the man would invite guests over, and then he would tell the cat, he would get the cats to go serve the guests. The guests would be sitting down, and all of a sudden, the cats would emerge from the back with teacups and plates, and some carrying the sugar, etc., and they would walk to the guests, and the guests would be so profound and so amazed. How did you train cats to do this? This is so profound, amazing. And then those people would leave, and they would tell other people about the man whose house is full of cats who serve guests. And then other people want to go visit the house, just to see this phenomenal experience, this phenomenal sight. They go and even people who didn't like tea just wanted to go and see and experience being served by cats. They would go, get the experience, amazing experience. They go back and tell their friends and their neighbors. Neighbors would go to this guy's house, and he became very proud of his reputation at having trained cats who could serve guests in a way that was profound and phenomenal. And then one day somebody in the village said, this sounds a bit weird, that you would take cats and alter their natures like this. Something doesn't seem right about this. Let me go check it out. And so the man, he went to the gentleman's house, and the man welcomed him, and he sat on the couch. He said, yes, I've heard about your amazing cats. He says, yes, of course, I have big reputation for this. Please let me honor you. And so he goes in the back, and he does what he does with the cats. He comes sit down, he calls his cats out, and they come out with the teacups and the saucers and the sugar and everything, and one of the cats is holding the spoon, and they come out, and they're all around him, and he's amazed at this sight, and he says, wow, this is really incredible. Just let me show you something. And he goes in his pocket, and he pulls out a mouse, and he winds it up, and he lets it go. And the mechanical mouse goes, and the cats, they drop everything. Right? All the dishes come crashing down, the tea comes spilling, the sugar's all over, and they return to their normal fitra state, and they go chasing the mouse. Now, the host is completely shocked at this. He's broken, he's upset, he rebukes the cats, he takes the paper one by one and starts beating the cats, and everything is embarrassed, his house is messed up, he's been disrespected in front of his guests. The performance that he has so carefully orchestrated for the eyes of people and for his own reputation, that performance has just been debunked, has just been destroyed. This incredible tragedy has happened, and then he gets upset. He realizes that all of his loss, his status and everything has just been destroyed because of this guest. So then he turns and blames the guest. How could you come to my home and disrespect me like this? I served you, I went to serve you. My animals, my cats, they've been trained to do this amazing feat. And the guest, he says, wait a minute. He said, don't get upset with me for having falsely trained animals to perform a performance for the eyes of people. He said, don't blame me for false performances that you orchestrate. He said, all I did was show you the reality of their own nufus. He said, you cannot blame cats for chasing mice. And you cannot blame cats for chasing mechanical mice. But you can blame yourself for trying to train a cat to do something it's not supposed to do. And that, brothers and sisters, is the lesson. That Ramadan is about training us to do things we're supposed to do. It's not about training us to do things we're not supposed to do. But we enter into it with the attitude that we're just supposed to do this in Ramadan, and that's it. And that is a trick of the nafs. That is the nafs training cats to serve people. But when the mouse comes, the nafs becomes what it really is again. When Ramadan is back, and all of the mechanics of the world start operating again, you go back and everyone goes back and chases the mechanical mouse. And we forget our training. The difference is that the training of the man was false training. It was not training that was geared at transforming the inner core qualities of the cat. Ramadan at its core targets the nafs, targets the human soul, because human transformation does not begin externally. It begins internally, and then it radiates externally. This is the crisis of Imam al-Ghazali. He experienced the ultimate human existential crisis. He was a young scholar, and he inspired the Wazir Nizam al-Mulk, the great wazir of the Seljuk Empire in Baghdad. And he hired him and put him at the top post. And Imam Ghazali had all the top students and everything, and he was a source, and his knowledge and his writings became the discourse of the day. But he realized at some point that all of that, despite the external education that he had, and he was at the top of his post, and this has profound ramifications for us that live in the age of information and technology, that despite his education, there was that education masked over his real ignorance at that time of his Maker and what he was supposed to be doing. Cultivating that relationship, that inner relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he entered into a crisis, so much so that when he started to give a dars, he couldn't speak. He couldn't talk. The gift that Allah gave him, it was taken away. And then he realized he had to go on a journey. He had to develop himself from the inside out, not from the outside in. It is not coming to the masajid alone that transforms us. It is not giving in public alone that transforms us. It's not even breaking fast together. These external demonstrations and performances for people that are in front of the eyes of people, that is not what transforms us. It is not how many lines of Taraweeh we can produce in 30 days, not even 27 days. That's not the barometer of success and of spiritual growth. Allah doesn't count numbers. He doesn't count how much tea you can bring to somebody or how you can train cats. It is the qalb. It is the qalb that matters. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Ta'isa, how wretched, how unfortunate, how disgrace is the abd dinar, the one who focuses, and the priority is the dinar, wa dirham, wa abd al-qamis, and the servant of material things. The servant of material things, that person is a wretched person, because that person has not internalized what they're supposed to be internalizing. And so, فَلْيَصُمْهُ, Allah Ta'ala says, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ شَاهِدًا, whoever witnesses Ramadan, from whoever is alive, whoever is able to fast, whoever is cognizant of the fact that Ramadan is here, فَلْيَصُمْهُ, that person has to hold back. That person has to refrain. And the siyam that we are supposed to do, its introductory phase is staying away from water and foods. That's what gets us in the door of siyam. But siyam is greater than that. And so as we welcome Ramadan, our abstinence from eating, our abstinence from drinking, is only an introductory or cursory example of all other things we are to abstain from. Because as the Prophet ﷺ also said, what good is it if you stay away from your food and your drink, if the servant of Allah withholds from eating and drinking, but at the same time they slander people, or they backbite people? Allah has no need for the servant to leave his food or his drink when they've not internalized other aspects of the fasting. And so the siyam at its core is about the reformation of the nafs And the seat of the nafs, the home of the nafs, the core of the nafs is in the stomach, in the abdomen. And so the fast targets that area. And so the nafs becomes weaker and weaker. When it becomes weaker and weaker, those material drives become less and less. When those material drives become less and less, we have more energy to pray more and more. We have more energy to read Quran more and more. We have more energy to turn away from those negative influences that normally we might succumb to. So the fast gives us energy for that. And so it is through what we lack. It is because of the things that we give up. It is because we say no that Allah Ta'ala gives us a yes. It is through us saying la, it is through us putting up limits that a certain door is opened. That's why in our tawheed the la ilaha comes first. It is through the negation. And then after that the illallah, the affirmation comes. You cannot get the benefit of understanding illallah until you first negate and say la first. And so you have to withhold. You have to say no. You have to put limits. You have to restrain. And then through that restraint, through that limit, there's a certain barakah that emerges. There's a certain lightness that emerges. There's a certain rule that emerges that cannot emerge unless those limits are there. And the person who doesn't understand that is the person that the Prophet ﷺ said, there are some people that the only thing they get from fasting is hunger, but they don't see what's past the hunger. They don't see what is given in place of the hunger. Because although the body hungers, the ruh, the spirit, is fed. And the thing is that we spend most of our time throughout the year feeding our bodies and not our ruh. The ruh has a diet as well. It has a regimen it's supposed to receive. Its diet is actually fasting. Its diet is the Quran. Its diet is the remembrance of Allah. And its diet is actually Qiyamul Layl as well. That is the nourishment of ruh. And so if we spend 9 months, 10 months, 11 months out of the year becoming obese with halal food, and in some cases borderline halal food, and we're only concerned about 30 days of feeding our ruh, then you do the math in terms of how sustainable that is. You cannot invest, you cannot spend only 30 days and then get in debt for the remainder of the year. On Yawm al-Qiyamah, those scales will not add up like that. Even though Allah Ta'ala increases the ibadah, the barakah of the ibadah in Ramadan, even though there's Laylatul Qadr. But the idea is to give us something, to give us a barakah that can only be had through Ramadan. So we latch onto it, we take it, and throughout the rest of the year, we continue that practice. And then the next year, we latch onto something different, we take it, and we continue that practice. And therefore, our lives as a whole, from a net point of view, are accelerating like this. We improve like this. We'll have bad points, we will fall, we will make mistakes, but we will not go back. We will go forward and go down, and then go forward and we'll go down, and then go forward and we'll go down. There will be a succession towards advancement, progress, more salih actions, what is called qurbah, or nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so in conclusion, brothers and sisters, let us not be who we were in the past, but instead let us be inspired by who we can be in the future. Let us not be content with coming to the masjid for only 20 days. Even if the Taraweeh stops on day 25 or day 27, let us come to the masjid throughout Ramadan. And even after Ramadan, our ibadah doesn't stop, because our niyyah to be Muslims doesn't stop. So our niyyah to worship Allah is permanent and habitual. It is who we are. And so our external character and our external behavior should be consistent. And so if we were a type of person that didn't come to the masjid as much, so we have to improve on that. If we didn't buy halal as much, we have to improve on that. If we didn't pray to Hajj as much, we have to improve on that. If we didn't give as much, we have to improve on that. And so that is what we're welcoming. We're welcoming improvement. We're welcoming progress. We're welcoming a new form of ourselves, and we're welcoming a new legacy and a new hope for ourselves, our community, and our legacy. Ya Rabbal Alameen. Answer our du'as, accept our fast, forgive our shortcomings, and give us acceptance and nearness to you in this life and in the hereafter. Bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أوصي وأوصيكم بتقوى الله. قال تعالى: إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا شر ما قضيت إنك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك إنه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من عاديت تباركت ربنا وتعاليت فلك الحمد على ما قضيت. نستغفرك ونتوب إليك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. عباد الله اتقوا الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. أقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. استووا صفوفكم. The line straight inshallah. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون والذين هم عن اللغو معرضون والذين هم للزكاة فاعلون والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون إلا على أزواجهم أو ما ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم غير ملومين. فمن ابتغى وراء ذلك فأولئك هم العادون والذين هم لأماناتهم وعهدهم راعون والذين هم على صلواتهم يحافظون أولئك هم الوارثون الذين يرثون الفردوس هم فيها خالدون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. لإيلاف قريش إيلافهم رحلة الشتاء والصيف فليعبدوا رب هذا البيت الذي أطعمهم من جوع وآمنهم من خوف. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. التحيات لله والصلاة والسلام عليك أيها النبي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.